I think you just have to believe in yourself and have hope. Just hope that tomorrow's going to be better. And maybe not tomorrow, then the next day. Maybe in a month. Maybe it'll take a year, and that's going to be very painful, but you're going to be stronger on the other side of it.
All right, hello everyone. Welcome to the What You Don't Hear podcast. This is a show where I sit down and uncover the life stories of my guests. We take a dive into their minds, their souls, their hearts and lives, and figure out what makes them them, shedding some light on the side of their story that nobody gets to hear. I'm your host. My name is Theisen. I'm a creative director, a filmmaker, a brand builder, all in all, a doer of many, many things. And of course, I'm a podcaster as I bring you this show every other Monday and most Fridays for those shorter 15-minute episodes, straight out of the place that I currently call home, Columbus, Ohio. Now, something else I might be adding to that list of things that I do soon after this conversation, though, is like poet or author, maybe. Because this week, I've got a fun conversation that definitely left me motivated and inspired to create even more as I got to know poet Raquel Franco. Now, we had never met before. She actually found the show on Instagram and reached out, and we lined it up and made it happen, and I'm very stoked that we did. It's a really fun conversation that, like I said, left me wondering if I actually want to try and write a book or make some poetry or something, because Raquel definitely has an encouraging way about her that makes it all sound really possible, honestly, as she, of course, shares her story of how she made it happen for herself. It's a fun one. And I mean, I don't know. I always say that, right? I highly doubt there's ever going to be one of these intros where I'm like, yeah, guys, not a fun one this week. Sorry, just kind of a lame conversation, bad episode for you. You know what I mean? I'm never going to say that it wasn't fun, and I'm probably never going to not have fun while doing this. You know, I'm never going to say that these aren't fun to do. You get how it goes by now, right? So this one, like everyone before it, is a fun conversation, so let's get to it. Here's episode 39 of What You Don't Hear and my conversation with Raquel Franco. Cool.
Does it pick up like
a little bit?
Yeah.
Yeah,
okay.
A little bit. I don't know if there's a big part of your story where you're going to be like,
no, but
then this. But if you're a person who talks with your hands, like, that's totally fine. Like,
okay.
It's not going to ruin the whole show if you accidentally hit the table or something, or set the cup down or whatever.
Yeah.
Like,
Okay.
That will be more than okay.
And language, like, is there like?
You can say whatever you want.
Okay.
Yeah, whatever words or verbiage you want to use to tell your story, you're free to do so.
Okay. I'm not
So
like a
totally
big
fine.
like foul language person, but in my slip, so I just.
That's totally fine. It'd be funny if you're like, so we're good, and I'm like, yeah, we're recording. You're like, what the F is up, mother effers? Like, welcome to the show. And I'm like, all right.
That would have been cool.
You're great. Like, I mean, there's still a chance. I can edit this later.
Yeah,
You can throw that in if you want.
No.
Okay, Raquel, are you ready to do this?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Ready to make this happen. So, welcome to the show.
Thank
I
you.
am so stoked that we're getting to do this. I'm excited because we are literally meeting for the very first time. We have not talked, aside from the 5 minutes before we actually started recording. We haven't talked outside of Instagram.
Nope.
That is it. So
just in the DMs.
in the DMs, setting this thing up. So I'm excited because I wouldn't call it a rule. I guess it's just something I do, is for this show, like, I don't really investigate people. Like, I know the general thing that they do, or the general thing that they create, or generally who they are. But I don't know anything else. I kind of save it for the show. So that way it's like, cool, I'm getting to know everything about you. So all that I know about you, just to kind of kick things off, you're a poet, you're an author.
Yeah.
Tell me about that, because you just recently released a book, right?
Yes.
Poetry book.
Yes.
Tell me about that.
It's called When the Bee Stings. It came out in May. It is kind of a tribute to women. There's a big part of the book that's about friendship, which I feel like we don't value enough, especially women. I feel like there's a lot of female empowerment messaging going around, but we don't talk about friendship a lot. So it was like super important to me that I included that in the book. And of course, there's poems about, heartbreak and like being a badass and getting over it, and a lot of healing. Do you know Cleo Wade?
I'm not sure that I do.
Okay. She is a poet, but they're more like inspirational quotes. And so I kind of wanted to incorporate that, and I used shorter pieces in the book for the reader to take with them. Like if they want to rip it out or like write it down for them to remember, that was kind of my goal. I feel like this book, prior to the ones before, I really wrote for the reader. So. Okay.
So this isn't your first book?
No.
What book number is this?
3.
3. Okay.
And a half.
3.5. Okay. All right. 3.5. I love it. So how do you even go about making a book? Like that, I know that's such a broad question probably, but that's like something that's so fascinating to me that I feel like it's always cool to think about writing a book and let alone publishing a book, and whether it's self or through an agency or whatever. How do you, you're at 3.5 books now. Like, how do you even do that? Like, because that is such a fascinating concept to me of even gathering thoughts and making them logically fit into a book. And I don't know, that's just so cool to me that you've made multiple books now.
Yeah. The first 2.5, the half one is a book that I published and I'm not proud of, and I took it down.
Okay.
It was like the first thing I released, and basically I just gathered all the poems that I posted on Instagram and like put it together. I just kind of wanted to try it, and get the feel for it. And I don't know. I don't want to talk about it because like I'm just not proud of it.
Right, right.
Like I'd say a year and a half later, I was like, okay, I want to learn how to do this. I'm going to research how to do this. I'm not just going to throw something together. I had to hire an artist for the cover. I went through, at the time it was called Create Space, but it's through Amazon. It's called KDP Publishing now. And they do everything for you, and it's free to publish your books. And then they're sold on Amazon. It's awesome.
Wow.
Yeah. So
okay.
The money I put into it was for the cover and the artist. And then if I want to promote it, I took my own pictures and stuff for the first 2 books. This last one, I got a photo shoot done for the marketing and stuff. I always come up with an idea and a theme first. And then I will take some poems from Instagram and put them into the book, and then I fill in the rest with whatever idea I have. My last book was kind of like a memoir, and I wrote a lot about growing up and what that was like for me. And I feel like all of my books and all my poetry is about female empowerment and healing, so that's always in there.
Yeah.
And then the first real book that I published, it was in 3 parts, and it was basically about breakup. The first part was about the breakup, and then the hurting, and then the healing. So it was in 3 parts like that. It's really easy. You just have to put in the work. Honestly, I don't know. I just came up with the chapters, came up with the theme, wrote it, put it together, went into Word, and
is that like you noting things down on the notes of your phone, or are you a notebook person where you're writing it out concisely? Because that the putting it together part has always been in my brain where I'm man, how do you take all of these different thoughts and ideas and then know how to even line them up and how to build chapters and stuff? Are you writing it chronologically, or are you okay, this piece here and this piece here, and then kind of puzzle piecing it together?
Well, I did it different each time. And I write in everything. I write in my notes app. Surprisingly, I get my best ideas when I'm driving in the car, and it's not safe, and I would tell no one to do this. But they will leave you. If you don't write down your ideas right away, they're gone.
I'm with you, yeah.
So I will flip out my phone and try to type or talk into it. But I have a journal. I use Word doc, Post-its, whatever I have available.
Yeah.
But with the first 2 books, I tried to do it in chronological order. Like when I came up with an idea, I wrote a poem, I would like try to put it in place. And I mean, you still have to rearrange afterwards because it doesn't always flow. But then my last book, I just wrote. And then I printed it all out and like put all the pages on my floor. It was everywhere. It was chaos. And I put them in order that way. And for me, I feel like it flows better.
Wow.
I guess
Okay.
because I could see it all in one, like, I don't know.
You can kind of maybe see all of your options, like all the possibilities.
Yeah,
Like, this here,
exactly.
that there. Like you're looking at all the puzzle pieces rather than just like.
Then scrolling through Word.
Yeah, that is awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, so you said you've changed the process up via each book that you've done, and probably you've now figured out a little bit more of what your actual system is of like, all right, cool. I know what works like for me at this point.
Right.
Now, you also mentioned taking things like from social media and putting them into these books. Mm-hmm. That is something like that's maybe the only other thing outside of I know you're an author and a poet that I know about you is you use your social media and you share your work on social and I think it's great and I think you do a great job at it. So did you sharing your art in these poems and all these sort of stuff, like did it start on social and then become like I should make this into a book, or like I guess which one came first?
Totally social media. It actually started on Tumblr, and I wish I could remember the year. It was before 2016. And I was going through a heartbreak, and I just started like writing little lines, like sad little lines, but then people would respond and say, oh, I feel the same way, and I was like, oh wow, like I really was just doing this for myself. But then when it started helping other people, I was like, this is amazing. Like, it's so humbling because you don't think anyone's listening. And then Instagram kind of started to come up in that time, and I saw some poets like transferring their work over to Instagram, and so I did the same. I met other poets and just started networking and learning so much more. And then by networking with other poets and us like helping build each other up, my following began to grow. And I really was like, I want to do this. When I was a kid, I wanted to be a writer, and I kind of just forgot about it. You know, you're just trying to pay the bills and live life. And I was like, this is fulfilling. And it like, I was at my 9 to 5 and it was all I could think about. And I was like, I want to write books for a living. So I'm still not making a living yet, but it's my goal. So yeah, I mean, that's how it got started.
You're doing it though, which is awesome.
Yeah.
And I also think that that's so cool to like take it from, hey, I was just making these like little art pieces on social media, and then people started to care about them enough that then even if enough people didn't care about them, like whatever it is, you still were like, I'm going to take these things I do on social media and I'm going to turn it into an actual like physical piece of art or physical like creation, right, more so, rather than just like, yeah, I'll just toss some posts out on social. Like that's so cool because I guess like I feel like the way I would have thought about it, like if you would have had me assume, I would have been like, oh, you made the books first and then you've carried that over into your social media. But it was actually completely opposite. So in that, you mentioned that when you were a kid, you wanted to be a writer. So take me back to growing up. Are you from Columbus?
Yes.
Okay, so born and raised in Columbus.
Yeah. I
Gotcha.
was born in Cleveland, but raised here.
Okay. So what was it as a kid that made you want to be a writer? Like, and was it like a young age? Was it like later in like teenage years when you were trying to figure out your life? Like, what was it that attracted you to that idea?
I was obsessed with books. Like, I would spend entire summers just reading books. Like, I was that kid. And then one day I was like, I want to write my own story. And I kind of wanted to like mix fantasy and my own life and what I wish would happen, you know, like writing love stories. It's so cheesy thinking about it. But yeah, it's funny. I remember even at that age having such a passion for it, but feeling like I wasn't really good at it. I don't know if every school has it. There's a club called Power of the Pen.
Okay.
Have you ever heard of it?
I don't know.
It's like they compete with like other schools. I don't even remember if it was regionally or nationally or whatever it was, but you had to write an audition to be in the club. And I would audition every year, and I didn't make it until my senior year. But even then, like, I just felt like everyone was better than me. And it, like, crushed me. And I think that's why I didn't pursue it after, because it was always what I wanted to do.
Wow. Okay.
But I just was like, well, I guess I'm just not good at this. Like, I don't know. But now, what I know now, I'm like, I wish I hadn't given up, but I wish I would have had somebody pushing me, maybe.
Yeah.
You know, that would have helped.
Okay, so that actually kind of brings me to my next question is like, you know, what was growing up like? Mm-hmm. You know, like peeling back the curtain a little bit, like did you have a creative environment that you were growing up in? Did you get the inspiration or love of books and that sort of stuff from like a family member? Like, walk me through that.
My mother always loved to read. But my mother was actually an alcoholic, and she passed when I was 24. So home life wasn't great, especially in high school. My stepdad and her were divorcing. I don't even know if she made it to my graduation. There was just a lot of like struggle going back and forth, and I felt very alone. And even my brothers and sisters, nobody really was creative or artistic. The only thing we shared was our love of books. Another thing, my real father, who lives in Venezuela, I used to have contact with him when I was young, and then we lost contact until recently. He like found me on Facebook, and then I like found cousins and my grandma, and it's really cool, but they all are fluent in Spanish, and I know none. So
right, okay.
It's really hard to like have conversations. One of my cousins is fluent English, and we can speak. And what's really cool is my cousins are artists. Like, they sing and dance and write, and I was just like, oh my God, like, it makes me teary thinking about it now. Like, it like kind of made sense and made me feel, I guess, less alone.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Because no one really understood, and even now, you know, my family, they don't get it. Like, I'm like, oh, really? I put a book out, and they're like, oh, go. Like,
isn't that so interesting? Like, I don't know if it's like this term is silly to me, but I don't know if it's like a generational thing or if it's, because it's also like, I don't know if it plays a part into like where any of us are from or whatever, but I feel like there's like this weird disconnect between people sometimes when it's like, you know, you're sitting and you're like, I made a book, and it's like, you know, I'm getting to know you for the first time, and I'm like, what? You made a book? Like, how did you make a book? That's so cool. But like when family members are like, oh yeah, like, okay, I went to work today, like, big deal. Like, right. That's always so strange to me. And it's not that like everybody has to like praise you for doing something cool, but it is weird when there's like that misunderstanding, and it's not even that they don't care, maybe. I think it's more so maybe they just don't understand. Yeah. And that's so strange to me.
I
like,
know.
I feel like I have that with certain like members of my family where I'm like, hey, like, I got to be a part of this project or lead this thing or do this thing that I'm like super proud of, and I'm like, whoa, like, this took so much work to do, and they're like, cool, yeah, like, but you don't watch sports or anything, so like, what do we have to talk about? And I'm like, oh man, like, that's a very interesting thing, because again, like, me hearing that you were publishing a book, multiple books, that's so cool to hear. So it's interesting to see like that strange disconnect, like, and especially even, is that like family that's here in Columbus, or is that family kind of everywhere? Okay. Because for some reason I also have it in my head that like I come from a very small town. So sometimes I justify that, and I'm like, oh, well, they don't get it because it's like there is that small town mentality sometimes. I'm like, oh, well, that's small town? Probably somewhere you've never heard of. It's called Crooksville. Nope. So yes, it is like an hour and a half like southeast of here. Okay. Do you know where Zanesville is? Okay, so it's like right beside Zanesville. Okay. That's usually my key to helping people figure out where it's at. I'm like, yeah, you know where Zanesville is, probably, right? Like, yeah. So you know, it's a very small town that not a lot of people know about, And it's very interesting because a lot of the people who live there, it's kind of that town where it's like, you don't really leave. You know what I mean? I don't even mean that in a negative way. I'm just saying you find your comfort there and you don't leave. So I always usually go to that in my brain where I'm like, oh, that's why we're kind of disconnecting on this, because even though Columbus is not like the world, I feel like I'm experiencing more of the world, like doing a lot of the things that I'm doing. And maybe if you stay in your hometown, you're not really experiencing those things outside of like, hey, I'm going to work and I'm hanging out with my friends and family that live here. But it's always interesting for me to hear, like, even hearing you say, like, yeah, I tell them I'm doing these things and they're just sort of like, yeah, cool. Like, okay.
Maybe they just don't understand how hard it is. Like, I've given up time with my kids and my husband, my job. I actually no longer work a 9 to 5, and that's daunting for me. And just like trying to keep it all balanced, like it is work. And maybe they just don't see it that way because I'm not going into the office, or I don't know.
Yeah. It might be that old school thing of like, you're supposed to go to a job. Yeah. I think it's either like you have to go physically do a job for someone to understand, or you just have to be famous.
Yeah.
Like, I think that's the other thing is like, if you were on TV, like, yo, like, what's up, Ellen? Like, check out my new book. They'd be like, that's my girl.
Oh, yeah. What's funny about that is I feel like with this last book, because it was with a publisher, I got a little more excitement out of them, you know, but still, like, my dad didn't come to I had a book party, and like, my dad's like, yeah, that's cool. You know, like, he doesn't get it, but my brothers and sisters are like starting to see, and I think it has a lot to do with that. I've been doing it for a long time, so it's not just like a hobby.
Yeah,
you know.
Yeah. Does it feel? I don't know if this is like too much of a dive off the deep end here early into the episode, but does it feel weird? Like, do you feel like you aren't that connected with a lot of your family members? Like when they maybe don't support these things or don't know how to? And I ask that because I sometimes battle with that, where I'm like, I do notice those differences between myself and family members. And it's like, I want us to be so connected and you know, find like what it was like, you know, when maybe when you're little and, you know, every family is awesome and everyone's close, and now as an adult, and I understand that that's just growing up. Yeah. But it's weird when it's like when you're a kid, and you know, I used to draw all the time when I was a kid. So whenever I would do a drawing, they'd be like, whoa, it's so cool. And now I'm like, look at this like career I'm making for myself. And they're like, yeah, it's like kind of cool. I don't know, whatever. And I'm like, oh man, like it's not that I have a bad relationship with them. It's just I feel like the connection is different. Like, do you feel that at all? Am I not making any sense? Like, I don't.
No, that totally makes sense. I never thought about it that way. Like, you're so praised for any little thing that you do when you're younger, and then you grow up and do something that you think is amazing, and they're like, okay. I mean, honestly, for me, I'm closer with my family now because of my mother passing. Before that, I felt like, was it the black sheep? You know, like I just felt so alone in my household, and like we were not close at all. But then we really were able to come together, and now I kind of just accept that part, that they're not able to support me in the way that I wish they could. I mean, even my friends don't understand completely. That's why I'm so thankful for the poetry community that I found online. It's insane. Like, it has changed my world. Like, I don't know what I would have done without them. I don't think I'd be here, to be honest. I wouldn't know what to do, or I felt so alone in it, you know? And we've just helped each other so much. Like, some of them I've actually got to meet in person, but some of them, no. I mean, there's a girl in Australia who is like the most beautiful soul and has helped me edit my books, and like, it's just amazing.
That's so cool. And isn't that an interesting thing that like, I think that's like a good reminder for a lot of people, and something that I often forget is like, if there's something that you really care about, even if you feel super alone in it, like you're the only person who cares about that, I guarantee there's a lot of other people out there in the internet that also equally care about that thing. So it's awesome that you like found that community. Like, and I can't remember if you even said this earlier, like, did it take you a while to find that community? Like, was it like, I was freaking making poetry for like a couple of years just randomly and felt alone while I was doing it? Or did you find that community pretty quickly?
found it pretty quickly, actually. This is a really strange story. I don't even know if I can remember it. There was a publishing company that some guy, I don't even know what he did, and another poet tried to create. It was called Underwater Publishing. And they ended up scamming a lot of us. They said that they were going to publish our books because that's all we wanted. But then, and I should have known better, but there were like packages where you could pay and you could either get like an editor with your package or whatever. And so we paid all this money, and tons of us, probably 90% of us, never got a book published. And they took our money. And within that, we all bonded together. Like we had like a WhatsApp group where we were like, what's going on? I don't know, and we really got to know each other. And it's funny, out of that came this Instagram page called Words with Queens. I'm not a part of it anymore, but me and this girl started it just to empower women and kind of to like put a light into the poetry community, because it was like really sad. And it was weird because probably nobody had any idea. We're just posting our work, but behind the scenes, like, we felt so defeated because all we wanted to do was publish books, and they took our money, and like we didn't have any. So anyway, we started this Instagram page, and that's like where I met some of the women and poets who like have helped me today, and we really just boosted each other, and we were just like, this is, we have to help each other like get through this and get over this hump and continue to follow our dreams. And a lot of us have like some of these poets that I'm close with have books in Target, and like it's just amazing. It's crazy to like think about, because back in the day you had to like, you still do, but like submit your manuscript to an agent or to a publishing company, and then you don't hear back for 9 months, But now through Instagram, there's so many opportunities. There's, I actually have been in an anthology with 2 different publishing companies and 2 different books, and they reached out to me. Like,
that's so cool.
Like, it was amazing, and that opened up the door for me. Like, it's just amazing, like what the community and Instagram has done, even though I definitely have a love-hate relationship with it. Yeah. But
for sure.
I have to be thankful, as I wouldn't be here without it.
Right. Yeah. It's as annoying as it can be. It's still like that platform of like, all right, well, where else are you going to share this? Like, right. I suppose realistically, like, yeah. That's the weird like monopoly that they kind of have, is like, and there's a whole podcast topic for that, like a whole other show, but like that is the very weird thing. And that's even something I wanted to ask you, was like building your social media. And I know this is a whole trail off, and there's so many things with even your backstory I still want to get into, and I know I'm about to take us into a whole other area here, but like, how did you build your social? Was it just like finding that niche community basically and churning out the content? And I asked that more from like, not the like, give us the 5 cool secret tips to like gain followers, but more so from that love-hate relationship with Instagram and social media, because I know for myself that like creating to share on social media, like obviously isn't the only reason that we create. Yeah. But there's that obligation of like, well, I need to share. Did I post this week or today? Or should I make this a reel, or should I post it a regular video? Am I sharing on TikTok? Should I be doing that? Like, it has become this huge monster that is, I would say, 50% great and 50% terrible. Yeah. So how do you balance that? Like, even over the years of doing this and seeing it change and grow into this huge monster, what's the balance of like your even day to day, like, do you have those battles of like, I'm being creative, but am I being creative for social media? Or do you just like set it aside and you're like, I'm making posts, it's cool? Like,
both. It's a roller coaster. It started with us poets coming together. We just started sharing each other on each other's pages, and that really helped because we could just reach, everyone's audience. But then that kind of went away, and I actually had, because at that time you had to post like 3 times a day in order to grow, and that was really hard. I feel like now I have so much more content that like I can repost if I'm having a day where I can't do it. But back then it was really hard. It was really taxing. And I actually took like an 8-month break, and I regret it, actually.
Really? Okay.
Yes, because it's funny. There's rumors that the algorithm's always been the same or it's changing all the time. Who knows? For me, at that time, I mean, you could post and go viral. It was like nothing. When I came back, it was so hard. It was like I had to start all over. And it was tough for me, and I felt like I missed out. And that was a time when like other artists were getting opportunities that, you know, maybe I could have tried. And so I really regret that. And now that's something that like, no matter how hard it is, I am never going to give up again. Like maybe if I need 2 weeks or something, okay, fine. But I'm never going to take that long away from my dream. But anyway, so when I came back, then I felt like I had to start all over. And then I started looking at it as I was an entrepreneur, you know, and I started, I actually found Gary Vee. I love him. He like changed my life and the way like I think about it. And it's funny, I always had that mentality of like, I am here to empower women and inspire them. But then I realized like, when I was writing or about to post, I wasn't always thinking of, you know, how can I give back? You know, like how can I help them today? You know, I would just think about maybe something I went through and something that I need and would hope that it would help them. So I kind of changed my strategy in that way. And started trying to post on other socials, but it's hard. My focus has always been Instagram, but then this love-hate thing, I feel like one day you're up and everybody loves you, and the next day you have no idea why, but nobody cares what you're saying. And like then you're like, wait, am I not good? And then you could like start getting these stupid thoughts in your head, like, oh, I'm a terrible writer, nobody likes me, you know?
Yeah.
And it's silly, really, but again, I wouldn't be here without it. So I feel like I have to like keep going, and I have to do this, and I have to post. Now it's like I try to post once a day. And the reels, I can't figure it out. They don't like me.
Dude,
I don't know.
Yeah, that's again, this is like a whole other conversation, but like that stuff is like, I get it. And maybe, you know, it's like, I don't feel like I'm old, but I feel like I'm that old person who's like, oh, you want me to post a new version of this? What are you like, you know, a TikTok? What do you want me to do with that? And I'm just like, it's like, I get it and I understand it, but I'm also like, can't we just post stuff? And why does one thing have to be like the focus over another? Like, I don't know if you ever use IGTV or not, but like basically like, I feel like now if I post on IGTV, I just know that video just doesn't matter anymore. Like, because anything over a minute goes to IGTV.
Right.
So otherwise it's, you know, just a clip and it's fine. I feel like anytime I post an IGTV video, it's just like, it'll like, and the funny thing is like everyone wants to make the argument of like, well, you need to make better content. You need to do this and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, well, one, I don't, you know, maybe it's a double-edged sword of like, well, you can't complain about it if you're not going to do it. But like, I don't want to create content just in the hopes that it can go viral.
Yeah.
I am creating and sharing the things that I am creating and sharing, whether that's a short film, whether that's a podcast, whether that's a music video that I direct or a commercial I direct or a photo I take.
Yeah.
I'm just sharing me because that's what it's always been. Yeah. I'm sharing my forms of art. So I'm not going to like, and again, this is like the angry old man part of me where I'm like, I'm not going to go out and like I could either share the cool video I made with some behind the scenes of how it was made. I'm not going to like then be like, hold on guys, before we finish this scene, can I film for my TikTok real quick? Right, so that way it's like authentic from my phone, like, cause they don't like when it's from a real camera. Like, and I'm just like, I just don't like that idea.
I know.
And anyway, like with the IGTV stuff, like everyone makes the argument of like, oh, like it doesn't get viewed less, blah, blah, blah. Like, I can look at my insights. Like,
Right.
you know what I mean? When you have those on your page, you can look at them and you can see the number of reach that it gets. And I can see the drastic difference between these things, even if they're the same types of content.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's like kind of doing those like little scientific tests basically of like,
Right,
all right,
yeah.
what's the constant? What's the variable? Like, and you can look at those and be like, well, this content's pretty similar. And then it does unfortunately make you think, do I just suck?
Yeah. Or does Instagram hate me?
Yeah.
Sometimes I'm like, they're out to get me.
Dude, yes. I'm like, why would they be focused on little of me? I don't know. But I am like, like my content's just not getting shown to people. Like, I don't get it. Like, because I'm not making viral stuff or like whatever. But it's like, I hate that that's even a battle. Like, as funny as it is to say and it's silly to say, I hate that's a battle. That it's not just like, hey, I made a cool poem today. I'm going to make some cool design content out of it and I'm going to post it.
Yeah.
And not worry about whether, like, oh, is this going to get like as many impressions as the last one? And then like, how does that play into the rest of my career? And it's like, I'm hoping that I can just find success in the things I want to do without having to worry about social media. Like I don't want someone to ever look at like a short film I make and be like, well, we would give you a movie deal, but that only got 200 likes on Instagram.
Right.
Like, I know that's an over exaggeration, but that's how it feels sometimes.
Yeah. I mean, I know the publishing industry is like that. I mean, there's a rumor that you have to have 10,000 followers and they're going to look at your engagement. So that's the main reason I worry about it. What's funny is when I'm like so worried and I'm like, I'm hating worrying about it. And I'm like, I gotta get something out there today and it's 9:00 at night and I'll put something out at 11. And then when I'm like, fuck it. And then I don't care. I swear. It's like Instagram's like, you better come back here.
Yeah. Right.
And like, I'll like get like 1,000 likes or something. And like, it's doing so great. And I'm like, ooh, you bitch.
Yeah, you get that little bit. You're like, okay, yeah, I'll come back. Okay, yeah, no, it's cool. 1,000. Okay, can I get
like,
another 1,000 a day? Like, the addiction starts back up, and you're like, wait a second, that's pretty cool. Like, I feel like that's maybe even when I enjoy social media the most is when because I feel like I go in and out of phases where like for a couple months I'm like, my social needs to be good. I need to freaking play the algorithm, and then for a couple months I'm like, I'm just going to share whatever I feel like sharing, and I don't care, and I'll share how I want to share.
Yeah.
And I always feel like when I'm in those moments, it's fine.
I know.
Because I'm not concerned about it. But then you get those things where it's like, whoa, this got a lot of likes. Like, maybe I should.
I know. And then you're like, ooh, maybe I should try to repeat that. Or,
right? Like, maybe, is that like the niche of my social? Like, should I like try and keep doing that? And like, but I hate that, like, I feel like there's always such a back and forth argument where neither side, whether you against or for social media, I don't feel like either side is right or wrong. Because for everyone that can sit and be like, oh, social, like you're way too concerned about it. You don't need to focus on content creation. Just be authentic and be yourself. Cool. I totally agree. Yeah, be yourself, be authentic, don't fabricate stuff. Like, do whatever you want. Don't stress about it. But then the other person who is like, you need to post on a proper schedule. You need to post at the right times. You need to make reels. You need to make TikToks. Because if you don't, these agencies are going to look at the fact that you don't have 10,000 followers, and they're probably going to pass you up because the people with the big followings are getting the sponsorships and the endorsements. So it's like, well, both sides just made great points for either being authentic or just playing the game.
Right.
And like, that's what I hate is like, there is no actual answer for it. It's like you kind of just got to see what happens for yourself.
Yeah.
Like, do you want to try and be an influencer? Then you got to start doing influencer things, and you got to fabricate a little bit. And you got to have 19 pictures to post by a yacht every single day. So like, go borrow someone's yacht or something. Like, whatever it is. Or do you want to be just authentic and hope that you will attract the right audience that is for you? And you don't care about the extra numbers and the followers. And maybe it's not 1 million people that love what you're doing, but that 1,000 really do. And great, you've got 1,000 like well-connected people that really care about what you're doing. So it's like, I don't know. It's that's the weird thing about social media. It's like both sides of the argument are both right and wrong at the same time. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. I know, and you kind of hope that, if you're trying to connect, with an agent or something like that, that somebody will like see the gift in you, and that won't matter. And I think that happens sometimes, but we are definitely in an influencer world, and it's hard.
It's always weird, honestly, because I'm like, even with this podcast, I'm like, man, like, I don't want, because like I am sure there are people who have not checked the show out because I haven't had like LeBron James on. You know what I mean? Or Gary Vee. Like the fact that I haven't sat down with those people are like, fucking Ross and his podcast. Yeah. Oh yeah. Talk to creatives, you idiot. Like, and maybe I'm being too harsh, but like, I just assume there's a lot of people who probably don't give this a shot.
Yeah.
Because there's not world famous people on here giving it quote unquote legitimacy.
Right.
Even though every story, every person I have on here gives it legitimacy because they're authentic in real stories.
Yeah.
So I feel like it's like a near perfect example kind of what we're talking about, where I'm like, half of me is like, man, I wish I had someone super famous on here because maybe that would help. Like, and then people would care about my show.
Right.
But I'm also like, I don't care about that. And this is about just like meeting people who have something special about them or unique, or they don't even have to be creative. They are them, and that makes them unique. And their story and how they grew up and the trials and tribulations and struggles and triumphs, like that's what makes something special, the authenticity side. That's what I'm trying to showcase and share on this, whether it's my stories, your stories, whoever. Those are the things that I want to put out there. But again, it's that battle of like, somebody's not going to like listen to whoever's story that was on this week.
They might.
There
are podcasts that have like done well, and there's just like,
and that's what I'm hoping happens. It's like, I don't want them to like sit and do the whole like, well, it's like, I don't know that person, so I'm not going to get to know them. It's like, no, I want you to get to know this person and their story. So it's that constant battle of wondering, like, again, kind of like you said, like, well, we might kind of live in that influencer world. So when does authenticity win?
Right.
Or when does it, which is also weird because I feel like, people love getting angry at famous or successful people right now, right?
Yeah.
And hey, some of them totally deserve it. But it's like people love seeing people get success, and then like they're so about supporting the success.
Yeah.
But then it's weird because when they find out that person maybe isn't as authentic, quote unquote, as they thought they were, they get angry. But then they're avoiding sometimes, I'm not saying everybody, but they'll avoid the lower level authentic things.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, let's take it out of like the me side of things for a second. Like, I would imagine there's probably a really dope local pizza shop somewhere that is just the most like heartfelt, like family owned, awesome recipe pizza.
Yeah.
That people aren't checking out because it's like, it's not like Domino's or something. Like, I don't care about this local stuff. Like, give me the big famous stuff, or like a great. I feel like a really good example is like local musicians. I feel like local musicians battle with that like fraudulent idea of like what fame is and stuff all the time, when everybody forgets that like that big band that you love that's making you maybe not care about this local band, they used to be a local band at some point too. Everyone started somewhere.
Right.
And to bring it back around, because I'm rambling so much, like, it's just weird to me that like people, I think more often than not, will lean towards supporting something that's already successful, because I feel like they have to do less work to find out whether it quote unquote matters or not. And maybe I'm being too negative. Maybe I'm totally off base here,
point.
but I think maybe just a little bit people lean more that direction. But then when those things are kind of, it's found out that they're not as authentic as they thought it was, then they're like, wait a second, you're not being real. And it's like, well, that local, that your friend who's trying to get their career off the ground is actually being so authentic, but maybe you're not giving them the amount of support that they could need to push themselves further.
Right.
And you were giving it to this like influencer or celebrity who like, hey, support them and be a fan, but they've got it. They got it figured out. But now you're mad at them for the fact that they were a liar or something. It's just this really weird. And I know that's a whole media conversation and what is celebrity and fame and all that sort of stuff. But that's just something that I feel like I always kind of pay attention to. Like,
I'm guilty of that. Like when you were saying that, I was like, ugh. Like
we all are too.
Like if I see a poetry page and it has a lot of followers, I'll probably take more of a glance to read it and check it out. However, some of my favorite poets are like probably in the like 10K and under, and they're like amazing. And I feel like they only have a smaller following because they don't care. They're not doing it for the marketing piece of it. So I'm like, yikes, I do that.
But and again, we all do that. Like I guarantee there's something that I get caught up in that I'm like, well, this famous thing is really cool. And there's something that I just, because I'm not researching, I'm not finding the smaller version of that. And I'm not saying everybody has to support every single thing, but having, I guess for lack of a better term, been like grinding it out, as like a self-employed person or somebody who's trying to make a creative career for themselves. I've been doing that for like 10 years now. Like there's some times where I'm like, I just wish someone would pay attention a little bit more and like, hey, realize like that famous thing that you really like, I'm actually doing that over here a little bit, or this person I know is doing this. Like, for a while when I worked in the music industry heavily, and I was like trying to be an artist manager, like I cannot tell you the amount of amazing bands that I worked with that no one would give a shot because they weren't famous enough or popular enough.
It's so weird.
And I'm not even talking like people who listen to their music. I'm talking like agents, manager, like like bigger managers, labels, like they just wouldn't give these people the time of day. And I'm like, listen, is the music good? Because if the music's good, you can do something with it.
Right.
What they need is the machine to be behind them.
Exactly.
But unfortunately, the machine is caught up in its own cycle so much that they're not even giving these people the time of day.
Right.
When it's like, oh, you need X amount of followers, you need X amount of listens, you need X amount of, you need to DIY your tours for 97 years before we think you're worthy of like us booking you one. And somebody out there is like, oh, you sound so jaded probably. But like, it's like, I see all these things and I'm just like, it's backwards.
It is.
Like, it's just backwards. Like, and I feel like so many people don't work with like passion or heart first.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah.
And not even work, but maybe even think when it comes to this stuff of like, should I give this thing a shot? Maybe I'll investigate it a little bit.
Yeah.
Hey, I really like their music and I'm manager A on this dope label.
Right.
Maybe we've got some room in the budget where we can bring this band on and you know what? They're really not that big at all, but I see something in them. So if I put my support into it, whether it's monetarily or literal, just like energy and support, maybe we can make something of that. Because I think that's something that people overlook a lot. It's sometimes that tipping point to make something the success that you think they don't have is actually your support. Am I rambling? I feel like I'm rambling.
No, it's funny. My publisher is that like diamond in the rough. I got rejected by like my dream publishers and it was just like crushing. Like for a minute I was like, I'm done. And then I remembered this publisher, it's called Thought Catalog, and they reached out to me a long time ago, and because of that other publishing company that had promised me all these things, I turned them down, which is a huge mistake. And then I was like, you know what? I'm going to reach out to them again. And like, I didn't send them a manuscript. I didn't even tell them that I had a book written. Like, I just reached out to them and they called me and they were like, yeah. And I was like, wait, what? Like, I don't have to send you anything. Like, what if it's terrible?
That's awesome though.
And they were like, well, we just checked out your Instagram page and your message really lines up with ours. And they're like, and they gave you like free reign for everything. Like, it was incredible. It was an amazing experience. I mean, they let me design the cover. I couldn't get the color I wanted, but that's okay. Because some other author had it already. But like, it was amazing. It was just like whatever I wanted, whenever I wanted. Typically when you sign with a publisher, your book won't come out for like a year or 2 years later. And that is tough. I think I handed them my manuscript in December and then it came out in May. Like, it was
cool.
Amazing.
Okay.
Yeah. So they're really awesome. I was just thinking about how amazing I think they are for being that way.
Yeah. That's awesome because it sounds like they want to work with you to showcase your art, not just again the kind of the machine thing of like, well, what can you do for us? It's like, what can we do together?
Right.
It's not like a one-sided transaction, which I think a lot of people maybe think or work from, whether in the creative field or the business field or just maybe life in general. Like, it's like, how can we do this together to further expand on what this awesome idea or creation could be?
Right.
Not to jump around even more, but something you said in there, I'd be fascinated to know your answer, is like, you said you got denied by a publisher at one point in time, and during that time frame you were like, I just won't even do this anymore. So this might be a little bit of a broad question, but I'm sure there's some story to it. Like, have there been multiple times throughout this journey of becoming like a now published author and poet, like, have there been times where you literally were like, I don't want to do this anymore, like I can't do this anymore?
I mean, I always have like a moment. But the time I took like an 8-month break when I was just tired. It wasn't that I didn't want it anymore. I was just exhausted. But after I got rejected, I just thought to myself, I don't want to do this, because almost every other publisher you have to have an agent, but there are a few publishers who publish poetry where you don't. And I really didn't want one. So I was like, I'm just done. And in my head, I was like, I'll probably just end up self-publishing. But I was like, I'm just going to give up my dream of being traditionally published. And it's funny, that was like my dream. I was like, I want to be on the bestsellers list, and like, but I'm starting to not care as much. I've seen another poet where she goes back and forth, and she just does whatever, opportunities that come, she'll try it. She's tried like multiple publishing houses, and then she'll self-publish a book randomly. And it just kind of opened my eyes, like, I can be successful doing it on my own. It is nice though to have someone like put it all together for you.
Of course, yeah, I'm sure, yeah.
But there's so much more pressure. I felt a lot of anxiety knowing that other people were depending on this book,
Okay. Yeah.
So, like, someone else is designing this, someone else is printing this, like, someone is getting paid to do this for me, so I was like, So I felt like the marketing for me was a lot more important, and I wanted to really try to make sales, because it's not just about me this time.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense.
It was weird.
No, I'm totally naive to like all of this stuff. Like, I'm sure it's like, yes, a team and marketing and distribution, but like, what's the difference between like being able to self-publish and then having like an agency or whatever you may call it, do the publishing for you? Like, is it that they're helping you take care of the marketing and then they're doing the distribution, and that's like the awesome thing? Or like, and I guess more so, what is the difference? But also, like, how do you self-publish? Because like, if you can self-publish, I feel like that's almost a interesting choice to make, where it's like, do you get one, more control when you self, but it's also way harder to distribute your stuff? Like,
yeah, well, I mean, Amazon does it for you, the distribution. So that part is easier, but putting it together and the time that it takes, and a lot of people aren't designers. And so that's like, for me, money I had to put up for someone to design the cover. And Thought Catalog has a huge audience. And so they did help me market. They're a boutique publisher though. So like, your book isn't in Barnes & Noble or Target. They're only sold to like local shops. Like, I had this boutique in Oregon that was so cute, and they had my book, and I was like, I wish I could be there.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So I think that's really cool. And it is on Amazon, and their website. But the marketing piece, is really nice. And kind of, I learned a lot by like how they promote a book before it comes out, and how much they do and what they do, and then when it comes out, and then they were like, if you have any connections, reach out, like, kind of forcing me to like put myself out there. I just feel like I learned a lot, and I guess maybe that's now why I would feel more comfortable self-publishing, is I learned a lot from the experience. But they have, a marketing, I can't think of the word, area or whatever, and they have a design team, and they, I don't think they do their own printing, but they like work with someone. So there was a lot taken off of me that I normally would have to do myself. But it's also kind of weird. Like, I have yet to see any numbers. I think I find out this month or something.
Oh, okay.
So I'm just like, I have no idea what's going on, so that's weird. So there is a lot of control you give them. I don't know. I mean, it's a toss up. I feel like a lot of people say it's your preference because you have more control, but I think some people like to release it. It's fun. It's kind of funny now that I think about it, because usually I'm kind of a control freak, but ever since I became a mother, I'm like, it's fine. You just do it.
Yeah, you're like, let me get some help with some stuff here. Like, I got a lot going on.
Yeah. I mean, because I feel like the interior is the hardest. Putting together, formatting. Oh my gosh, I struggled so much. Because Word will do wonky things. And then I have to find out how to fix it. And
So what is the process of, I know I'm digging us so deep into the weeds here, but how do you take something from Word and then literally make it into a physical book? Is there just a website now that you're just send it to and they do it? And I guess I'm maybe asking more from a DIY, self-publishing standpoint. Yeah. How does that work?
You just PDF it and upload it to KDP.
Wow. Okay.
However, that's another thing that can be frustrating is, I don't know why, but you will upload it and then they'll show it to you and it's not what you uploaded. It'll just be wonky. The numbers are in the wrong place, or your name's offline or something. So then you have to figure out what went wrong, why that did that, and redo it.
Yeah.
Another thing, once you think it looks right, they'll send you a proof.
That's cool. Okay.
But then sometimes you get the proof and you're like, oh. One time I ordered 10 proofs, and that takes forever because you order it from Amazon, then Amazon has to send you the proof, and sometimes it could take 2 weeks. So that was 10 weeks before I was okay, it's perfect finally.
Yeah.
With the publisher, they sent it to me, I looked at it and was yeah, change this, change this, change this. They were okay, sent it back, it was perfect, and then it was done. And I was oh, that was nice.
Yeah.
you know? So... yeah.
That's so, yeah. I'm asking you all this. I'm about to go write a book right now. I'm about to go figure out that I feel is on the list of a billion things that I would love to do in my life.
Yeah.
I don't know what exactly I would make a book about, but you're making it sound, obviously there's a lot of work on the front end.
Yeah, but
getting
it's
it done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You just have to put in the work.
Yeah.
I feel everything is like that, honestly.
It's especially now, I feel anybody could make a podcast, but you've got to put in the work of making them and figuring out how you want to record it and what's the theme and what's the especially marketing and branding and all that sort of stuff. But I feel it is very similar, at least I'm learning now, for even making a book and becoming a published author, whether it's self or through an agency or whatever. That whole Amazon thing is not surprising, because I'm oh yeah, it's Amazon, okay, of course. But I'm also whoa, you can just freaking tonight anybody could go write a book and upload it and get a proof. I feel the way that I think and how excited I get about just seeing an idea exist, I feel if I just got a proof of a book I made, and even if it was wrong, I'd be this is the coolest thing. Can you see this proof? And they're Ross, the words are hanging off the side of the page.
Right.
Who designed this? I'm I did. Isn't that dope? My friend Raquel told me all about it. Go check her out. I would be so stoked. So yeah, I guess I'm literally I know I'm asking super random questions about tell me every process and step by step of making a book. Something that I do want to take us back into is, I feel I've heard even a subtle theme through your story of trying to make things happen, but then it like you get like a clarity, or you get like better belief in yourself when you connect with a community or connect with individuals who actually kind of believe in you. You know, we talked about the poetry community, you know, of when you started, and of course you're like, okay, I hope this is like working, I'm making this for me. But then when you found that there were other people who were like, not only do we like this, but we like you, and then you find this like awesome community of people that you then become friends with and work alongside. And you even mentioned some of that stuff with like family earlier, where it was like these weird disconnects, and you maybe didn't have like the best of relationships, but then when you're finding these ways of making those connections, you can then identify like, okay, like this is making me feel a lot better.
Yeah.
You know, and so I kind of want to dig into even back into like family stuff a little bit, because I feel like I can relate with you a lot on this, is having those disconnects in certain ways. And especially like when you're trying to navigate making a career out of something, and how important some of those support systems can be. And I don't know, maybe sometimes it's like you don't even know you don't have them until you really, it's like that moment where it's like, right now it would be great to have somebody to talk to tell me that I can do this. But you know, because I think you can get so caught up and just like go, like I need to get this done. But then when you kind of like strip all those things down, you're like, oh wait, like my friends don't really understand what I'm doing, or my family doesn't really understand. But then you find those valuable communities, or you find a way to connect with those friends or family members that then are like, oh, okay, this was all kind of worth it. Like, would you say that like those maybe like lonely times have been made to feel worth it now that you've kind of like started accomplishing these things, where you can kind of look back and be like, clearly that was not fun, but maybe now I understand why it happened?
Oh, yeah. I feel that about every single thing I've gone through, especially as a writer. I mean, it's funny. I don't know why I was like, because you didn't really say. I was like, I wonder what he's going to ask me and what we're going to talk about. So I started thinking about imposter syndrome, which I definitely struggle with. Like when I'm telling everyone, you know, to get up, you know, and try, and I can't get out of bed. I'm like, what am I doing? But then I remind myself that like I still lived through something and learned from it. And just because I'm going through something now doesn't mean I didn't learn from whatever I went through before. I still have something to say. I still learned something. So I feel like I went off a tangent. I forgot your question.
No, I that's it. It was kind of like that support system, and I guess I didn't even really ask a direct question. I sort of just went on a tangent as well. But you know, looking back at those like highs and lows, and really what that does for something that feeds into that imposter syndrome,
right?
You know, where you are telling people like, yeah, get out and do it, and then that, you know, the next day you're like, I can't get out and do it myself. Yeah. And but also like, especially maybe even during those times where, you know, awful things might be happening, figuring out how to keep yourself pushing through and moving through those, because I think that that's gigantic. You know, even taking the social media aspect out of it, of like, oh, like what am I saying to people? You know, what are you saying to you during those moments? So even like maybe to give you an actual concise question for this, take me back to whether it is like all the way back to growing up or first finding your feet in the poetry world. Like, and it doesn't have to be like my schedule day to day was this, but like when you're going through like tough times during those things, what did you do or find that kept you pushing towards those goals? Because it's very easy to have something terrible happen, whether it's daily, whether it's all at once, whatever it is. And, you know, most people wouldn't blame someone if they just stopped right there.
Right.
But you've chosen not to through anything that's happened. Like, so what pushed you through those things? And even, you know, you said, you know, growing up with alcoholism in your family, like, no, I keep almost tossing you a question, then bringing it back to myself, and I'm so sorry. But like, even just to relate to you on a little bit, like on that level, like that's a big reason as to why I don't drink and like never wanted to drink, is I witnessed alcoholism in my family, like
Right.
very directly, and I saw what it did and what it did to these people and how it made me feel.
Right.
And so, like, was any of that, like, that you dealt with, like, did anything like that ever deter you in any way? Or were you learning from those things as you were going through? Like, I guess just walk me through those.
I definitely feel like I was learning as I go. I feel like when I was younger, I like had to hit rock bottom in order to get up. But I was always pretty religious. My mother always took us to church, and I have seen, I kind of hate to use the word like miraculous, but for me, miraculous things happen just from prayer. And so for me, like, it was always something I had. And even after my mom died, I was like pretty mad at God. But I feel like for me, early on, that's what kept me going. And then I went through this time where after high school, I should probably say that I have been dealing with depression and anxiety since I was very young. Probably since I was like 9. And my parents really didn't believe in therapy or medication or anything like that. And so I kind of, just their response to it made me feel like I should be ashamed or I shouldn't talk about it. So that probably didn't help. I didn't really know how to heal or how to get through it. So, I mean, I made a lot of bad choices in high school. And then after that, I was like, I can't do this anymore. I was just tired, dating all the wrong men and drinking and going out and, and then I was like, I don't care what it is. I just need help. So I tried to find a therapist, and she was like, I really think you need to go on medication. And I was like, no, I don't know why. I was just so against it. And I had started writing again as I started going to therapy, and she really pushed me to keep writing. Like, I felt like in the beginning, she was the only one who kind of was like, that's awesome what you're doing. So that kept me writing. And so anyway, she really pushed me for months and months and months. And I kept doing everything she said. I was like working out, eating right, like trying to make good choices. And I felt good, but there was still like this underlying heaviness that I could not get rid of. And I was like, fine, I'll try medication. It literally changed my life. Like, I know people still to this day who are scared to take it, or like will take it and they don't want to be on it for the rest of their lives, or like no one wants to like talk about it. But I think a lot of people deal with it, and like it has changed my life so much that I'm like, just try it. And some of them didn't work. Like, I had to keep trying, but like it was like that heaviness just lifted and it was gone. It was incredible. And I still get like depressed, but not like I'm struggling to live and get out of bed depressed. So I guess from that medication and going to therapy and learning how to like take care of myself is kind of what I always go back to. And so even now, like when I'm going through something I'm like, okay, I've been really bad in my life and I got through that and I can get through it now. Like, I have the tools. So I don't know, is that answering your question?
No,
like,
no,
that's
it totally does. It totally does.
That's what gets me through. Like, I just keep reminding myself that this is going to pass. And now, because of my poetry, because I've tried to write down everything I learn, and like when I'm going through something, I actually don't write about it. I like sometimes like I'll give like a little snippet, like if I just can't take it and I just need to like release it, and maybe I won't show it to anybody. Or sometimes I'll post a little bit, and that's like when I have imposter syndrome, like maybe I shouldn't post this because I'm supposed to be like encouraging people. But sometimes I'm like, well, maybe someone's going through the same thing and they'll feel less alone if I do this. But I'd like to wait till I'm like out of the storm. And I just really believe that every storm I go through is to help somebody else.
Yeah.
So I try to tell myself that too, like when I'm going through it, like, okay, this isn't going to last forever. You're going to figure this out. Like, let's just try to keep going. And if I fail, then I get mad at myself. But I'm like, okay, one day you're going to get it together with whatever this thing is. So
yeah, no, and I love that you said that the part of even when you're going through the storm, you're reminding yourself that this isn't going to last forever. And I think that is a huge thing for people to hear. Is it's very easy to forget that when you're in the middle of the thing, because when you're in the middle of whatever the worst case scenario is that you're involved in, you're in your mind, you're like, this is going to be forever. This is it. This is terrible. Oh my gosh, I don't want to deal with this. You know, whatever it is. But even in the tiniest way, if you can remind yourself, like, this actually isn't going to be forever, because something at some point is going to change. And a lot of the times it is you making that decision to get yourself out of it, to avoid that situation, to leave the bad relationship or stop the bad habits or go to therapy or, you know, whatever it may be. A lot of it does start with us, but it's that identifier piece first. And so again, I love that you said that, of like, just the little piece of like reminding myself that this isn't going to last forever.
Right.
Because if something feels bad right now, that it doesn't mean it's going to be bad forever. Like 100%.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's something that I've definitely learned over the years. You know, because and obviously when you're growing up, you don't always know how to handle your emotions or handle problems, and you know. But I feel like I used to be, and I am a very overly emotional person.
Yeah.
Not so much in like the anger sense, but like if you told me too sad of a story, I will start crying, like 100%. So like, you know, growing up and not really knowing how to manage those emotions, a lot of the time, especially like when you're getting in your teenage years, like it would turn into anger, and I would just be like, this is so stupid and this is terrible and blah, blah, blah. And it just sucks. And now I'm going to let it suck, and that's going to make a part of my life not be good.
Yeah.
You know, but then like something luckily would always at some point, even when I was in the middle of those bad situations or adding to those bad situations, something would always click at some point where I was like, this doesn't have to be how it is from now on. Like, this does not have to be forever.
Yeah.
Like, I can engage in whatever it is right now. And, you know, I'm way better at now as an adult. I can catch myself before I actually act emotionally.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, if I walked outside and someone punched me in the face, like, I'd be like, are you all right? Like, do you want to talk about why you did that? Like, what's up? Like, hold on. Like, how crazy is this going to get?
Growth.
You know, like, where, you know, before it's like, it's just instant, like, anger, and this is so stupid, and you're stupid, and blah, blah, blah. Where now I feel like I can at least, like, you catch yourself and you think about things, and you figure out, like, okay, my reaction to whatever's happening right now is either going to make it worse or keep it where it's at. Yeah. And then how can I manage that? Like, I feel like that's one of the most valuable things that I've learned over the years. And I've repeated this quote so many times on this show, but like, I have ingrained in my brain the idea that whatever happens doesn't matter. Your reaction to it does. Yeah. And that's, you know, not playing into the idea of like, oh, nothing ever bad happens to me, blah, blah, blah. No, it's like identifying like, this sucks right now. This is terrible. This is draining. This is hard, whatever it is. But then, like, what are you going to decide to do about it? Like, for you. And it doesn't have to be the next day. It doesn't have to be in that moment. You take the time to learn and grow and experience and feel what you're supposed to be feeling with whatever happened. Yeah. But then at some point, just like we keep saying, probably said the word forever 100 times now, but like, it doesn't have to last forever.
Yeah. And I always say, just try. Maybe today you can't, but then say, okay, tomorrow I'm going to try. And maybe try is just getting out of bed, brushing your teeth, you know, getting dressed or going somewhere or whatever. Or maybe try is, okay, I'm not going to pick up the phone when that person calls me. Whatever it is, and maybe the next day you fail. And maybe that happens over and over, but I feel like as long as you keep trying and you are telling yourself, I need to have an intention to stop this thing. And if at least I keep trying, one day I'm going to get there. I don't know. That's what I always tell people.
No, I love it. I love it. I 100% am in agreement. Like, So even, now we can sit here and we're like, oh, we have these like positive mindsets and we think of all these things, but obviously we didn't always have those. And like you mentioned earlier when you were explaining kind of the growths and the ups and downs and stuff, you said you felt like you had to hit rock bottom in order to truly rebuild yourself. Was that like figurative rock bottom in that like high school time frame where you were just like, I don't know who I am or what I'm doing, and I'm just like, I don't know how to handle the depression. And you also said that was that the time frame where you had kind of avoided writing and poetry as well?
Yes.
Okay, so you didn't even have that kind of creation or escape out of those moments either.
Right. I mean, I did like the writing club, but then I never, because I felt like I wasn't good at it, I didn't really do anything else with it. I always kind of like felt like a failure. So then after that, I kind of gave it up. I'm trying to think how the timeline went, but my mother passed when I was 24. So prior to that, I mean, obviously home life wasn't great. So I was okay, but I was still depressed because I hadn't dealt with it yet. But then after my mother passed, I really like made some really poor choices. And now I'm thinking back, well, in high school I did too. Because home life wasn't great, so I just didn't feel loved. And now I know they loved me. They were just going through a lot that I can't even imagine, and I'm sure they were trying to hide it from me, but you don't know that when you're in high school,
Yeah.
You just think, nobody's paying attention to me, no one's talking to me, I don't know what's going on, So I felt very alone, and I probably got mixed in with the wrong crowd a few times. And then I'd say I got a good boyfriend. He was sweet and nice, and he was a good guy. But then after, we were together like 4 years, and then after my mom died, we broke up like very shortly after that. So that was really tough for me. And I think maybe a couple years I started writing, and then I got pregnant. That really changed things.
Yeah.
I really think I was trying to get my life together a little bit, and, I was starting to heal, and I was writing and going to therapy, and I was, had better relationships, blah, 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 but I was still, I don't know. I wasn't on medication yet, so there was still like this underlying like depression and anxiety. And then I got pregnant and had a baby. And I was like, wow, I really need to get my shit together.
That'll probably do it.
Yeah.
I can imagine that'll do it.
I mean, he changed my life. It's funny that you were saying how you responded and you were so angry at everything. He just turned 12 today. And I am trying to tell him, like, it's okay. It's okay. This isn't that big a deal. I promise. And he's like, you don't understand.
Of course. Also, real quick, his birthday was today?
Yeah.
You're here on his birthday. That's so cool. Like I'm sure you spent the whole like day with him.
He's with his dad, and we're celebrating his birthday tomorrow. So.
Okay, it's cool. I felt like very weird for a second. I was like, oh no, like I scheduled it on your son's birthday.
No,
like
I would have said something.
Oh yes, yeah. Perfect. I was like, oh no, what is going on?
No.
And I mean, I don't have kids. I am not a parent, but I can absolutely imagine how much that would have changed your just whole feeling at that point in time. Going from, like, does it change? I know the answer is yes, but I guess I'm wanting to hear your answer.
Yeah.
How much does it change your perspective of everything, of like because up to that point, everything that happens is just on you. You're feeling it. Yep. You're solving it. You're, you go through the ups and downs of high school. You lose a parent. You're dealing with all that. But then when you have a child, it kind of becomes like, okay, now, like, what sort of environment am I building for this new human being? Right.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's another thing that it still took me a while, and I kind of regret that it took me so long, but I was so afraid of losing my talent by taking medication. I thought I wouldn't be able to write for some reason. But I was like, I have to be in a better mindset for him. And the reason I regret it is because as soon as I took medication, I was so much more patient and understanding, and I feel like I was a better mother. But yeah, I mean, I feel like when I want something, I go get it. And with him, I was like, I want him to be, in a nice environment. I want him to go to the best school. So I am going to get a really good job. And I did. I was miserable, but making great money. But I was working in a cubicle at Chase.
Fun.
I don't want to say that.
Cubicles are always fun.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I worked out all the time. I went to therapy and got a good job and just did everything. And for him, but then I feel like you kind of forget about yourself. And that's when I was like, it was another kind of push towards the poetry and wanting to write books. Because I was, still writing and posting on social, like, during that time. Yeah, I don't know.
No, so
I don't know what I'm saying.
No, I promise you are making perfect sense. I'm absolutely following along. Do you still work at that job?
No.
Okay, so let's talk about that a little bit because, and obviously we already said the name. So if you find out later you shouldn't have said the name, let me know. I'll bleep it out. But
think it's fine.
I'm sure it's fine. No one.
It's on my LinkedIn that I work there.
Yeah,
I mean,
no one's
fine.
gonna care. So like, because I think there's so much to the balance of. I mean, I'm sure there are so many people listening to this, and I have the conversation all the time, and I went through it for the longest time. That balance of chasing a passion that truly fulfills you, but also needing to pay those dastardly bills that will never go away. And then also adding being a mom into that as well. How did you balance all that? And more so, you mentioned how draining that job became. So like, what was that time frame like for you of going to a draining job, but still wanting to follow this passion and of course, balancing motherhood as well?
Yeah. I'd say that poetry was in the back seat for a long time. It was basically trying to take care of myself, trying to take care of him. And I wanted to exceed at this job. It was the kind of job where everyone worked like long hours, to make the money. But I had to go home and pick up my kids. So I was trying to work faster in a shorter amount of time to be able to support us. So, poetry wasn't something I was like that focused on. I'd say I actually worked at a couple more banks after that, and I had some really bad experiences where I felt like I was taken advantage of. Actually, when I got pregnant with my second daughter, they changed my position while I was on leave and didn't tell me and changed my pay. It was ridiculous. And I was just like, I can't do this anymore. And I mean, I almost feel a little guilty because somewhere during that time, I started to focus more on poetry and my dream. And I had split time with my son's father. So when I was by myself, I had more time. I was so focused on it that I would find myself every little break I could get, I was writing a poem or, planning out content or I was like, this is bad. I really need to be working. I was like, okay, I'm going to work. And it was kind of like a back and forth, and it just started spilling over, and I was like, I really want to do this. So I feel like I don't know the story completely, but I know what ended up happening is I had too many bad experiences. And my therapist was like, I don't think that you're supposed to be doing this anymore. She was like, I think that you need to pursue your dream. And at that time, I was with my husband now. And she was like, I think you need to tell him that this is what you're going to do. And I was like, what? It was a really scary conversation to have. And he was upset, But he understood, like, because it was like ridiculous situations were happening to me at work. Like it had to have been a sign. Like one time we didn't get paid at all for like 2 weeks at one of the places I worked. Like just ridiculous things that doesn't happen, you know?
Very, very strange.
So I was like, I can't do this anymore. I'm never working at a bank again.
Yeah. So those were kind of like those with the support of the therapist, that kind of succession of things that were happening that was kind of the tipping point, basically.
Yeah.
Where you were like, okay, all signs are pointing to, I need to get out of this situation.
Yeah.
And not just an individual job, but was it, I need to get out of the quote unquote corporate world, workforce? Like, and I guess what was that transition like, you know, making that, of course, scary jump? Like it's scary for anybody deciding, okay, no more corporate stuff, time to chase the dream, because it just keeps tugging me in that direction. What was that transition like? Was it like, I'm going to move to part-time first, or I'm going to go get a different job that sucks less for a little bit? Or like, what was that like?
The last job I started a new job, and then my husband's grandma passed. I had to go to her funeral, and then my son got sick, and they let me go, which was super frustrating. So I just had a baby. It was like, kids get sick.
That was like sick. The reasoning that pushed them to do that?
Oh, yeah. It was another, like, is this really happening?
Yeah.
Like, kids get sick so much the first year. It's like, it's awful how much work you have to take off. But yeah, anyway, so I just left, and we talked about me working part-time, but then I don't know if anyone knows this, but daycare is more than a mortgage. It's like ridiculous. And I was like, well, if I go part-time, it's kind of pointless. It's just going to pay for daycare. So I was like, well, can we just try, me trying to pursue this dream, and we'll, see what happens. And then, if it's not working, I'll go back to work. And it was tough. It was a struggle for a long time. But actually now my husband, he's doing really well at his job. So that's been really awesome that I get the opportunity to do this. I know a lot of people don't. And it's actually awesome because we struggled so hard, and especially now, I almost feel bad saying that, cause I know, with quarantine and everything, people have lost their jobs, and we've been doing so great, and I feel so blessed, so blessed. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it's funny because when I was working full time, I would come home, take care of the kids, and then after that I was working on poetry, into the late hours. And I was so tired, and it's funny, when I wasn't working anymore, I almost didn't know what to do or how to structure my day. I still don't. I have a 4-year-old at home, so it's it's really hard. I try. I'm okay, in the morning while she eats her breakfast, I'm going to do this. But then she asks me for 50 million things, and it doesn't happen. So every day I'm trying to figure out how to balance, the work and,
totally.
And being a mom, and it's tough.
Right. So what, and I'm about to completely ask a question that almost ignores what you just said. But you said you're still trying to figure out your structure and all that sort of stuff. And I know it's, you don't have just a set schedule every day, but in a way, I guess, in a more practical sense, what did you find yourself beginning to do to ease through that transition? Of course, it was difficult. Of course, I'm sure there's always worries about money and all that sort of stuff. That always happens.
Yeah.
But when you become full-time, all right, I've got a lot of time to work on my dream now. Mm-hmm. What were the things you were maybe even trying to do during that time as you're figuring out, I've got all this time in the day now, what am I going to do with it? Did you try? What were some things that maybe you tried of cool, from this time to this time during the day, I know I've got a break from family, and I need to try and write this out every day, or set a social media schedule, or so now I guess I'm asking the more practical side, that advice side of things, of when you were transitioning into that, what did your days begin to look like?
Gosh, that's tough because I'm a planner. I always have a to-do list of things that I need to accomplish during the week, but day to day, I kind of just do whatever I think is going to work in that day. So all I can tell you is what I plan for the week. Like I will say, I guess I do a little, like on Sundays, I'm like, okay, I'm going to record all my TikTok videos. And then one day I used to take pictures of my poetry, but then that became too time consuming. But I used to plan a day for that, and I would batch all that out. But for my writing, it's very organic. I've actually lately been trying to just sit down and like say, okay, I'm going to write about this and just write about it. As I don't typically do that. So I would write every day, but it would have to come to me and it wouldn't necessarily be at the same time. I definitely write better at night though. And that was something that actually my husband and I did. Like, I was like, can you put the kids to bed? And that's when I'm going to write. But in the morning, I try to read. I try to read as much poetry as possible. I don't know. And because I post at random, I try to post every day, but there's no like set time. I will have like goals, like this month I want to submit to like 3 magazines. Or, when I was looking for a publisher, I created a list of everyone that I wanted to submit to. And then I would say, okay, I'm going to submit 1 a week. And then I would do that. I don't know. I can't think of anything else. I'm sure there's lots of other things, but
and not to like interrupt your train of thought as you figure out those other things, but I feel like we're very similar in so many of the things that you just said.
Yeah.
Like one, I'm more creative at night.
Yeah.
That is like, for some reason at like 9 or 10 p.m. my brain turns
too.
on. It literally is like, it's scary sometimes because it's almost like clockwork.
Yeah.
Like I could sit for an entire day and just be like low on energy and just be like, I literally cannot think of an idea. I have no idea what this design needs to be or what this script needs to be or anything that I'm working on. I'm like, I literally could not tell you one idea. And then like 9 or 10 o'clock, literally something just flips a switch. And I'm like, I know exactly what this needs to be. And then I can just like run through everything and like get it. And it's like it's funny because now it's kind of a running joke, but everybody expects it, that anybody I'm working with on a project, it's kind of like they know that I'm going to send them things at like 3 a.m. and then they will respond to them in the morning when they wake up like a normal person. Like when they're up at like 8 and I'm still asleep until like 10 or 11, they'll be looking at responding all the things that I sent them at like 3 a.m. that I'm like, this idea and that and this thing I got done. And the other things that I really related to what you said was the idea of, when we were talking about what was your day to day, and you were like, well, I don't really structure out my day to day, but I do at least have the guidelines of like a general to-do list and goal list. I do that exact same thing. Like, I don't like structuring out my day like hour by hour. I have friends that do, and I'm like, I don't know how you can do that. Like,
I've tried, it doesn't work.
Yes. And like it's just something for me, it's like this weird constricting feeling that I almost don't like. Yeah. But it's weird because when I'm on a video set, I'm like the most stern about a schedule. Like, I'm like, we need to get this done in the next 30 minutes. What are we doing?
Yeah.
But otherwise, I'm like, I love each day that I have to be as free as possible. Yeah. So I can decide, like, when you get those moments of inspiration, I can act on them when I get them.
Yeah.
And like, so again, as you were explaining that, I was like, yes, like I will do a general to-do list. I'll know my goals for maybe the day or the week.
Right.
But I'll kind of get to them. Of course, again, I'm not a parent, so I know that adds a whole other dynamic, but
I have to be like, if mommy's writing.
Yeah.
And I don't do it for very long, but like I said earlier, like if an idea comes to you, you got to write it down or it's gone.
Yes.
So
yes, I have been debating, this might be a funny thing to say, but I have been debating, there's this thing called a shower thoughts board. Have you ever heard of that? So it's like a waterproof dry erase thing. And I'm like, the amount of things that I think of in the shower, just as much as when I think of when I drive or when I whatever, I'm like, I think I might buy a shower thoughts board. So then you can jot down, because it's like ideas escape really quickly.
I know.
Like really quickly. And like there's times where like I'll be laying in bed at night, again, when a lot of ideas come to people, or you think about your life in general.
Right.
I'll be laying there and I'm like, no, I'm trying to like the whole thing where you trick yourself into you fake sleep so then you can actually fall asleep.
Yeah.
I'm trying to do that and I'm like, all right, go to sleep. But I'm thinking of my idea. And then like, I'll be like, I'm trying to go to sleep right now. I should not get up and get on my phone and note it down. So I'll be like, I'll remember it tomorrow. I do not at all. I'll remember that I had an idea.
Right.
And then I cannot think of it. Because like I'm laying there and I'm like, oh, well, it's about that new podcast you want to make. Like there's no way you're going to forget this because you're thinking about the new podcast. Like you're always going to be thinking about that for the next week.
Right.
And then the next day I'm like, what am I even like? No, I know I want to make the other idea, but what was it that I thought of? So it's like that battle of like, you literally have to write down your ideas to genuinely save them because just as quick as they pop up, they will go away.
Have you read the book quicker. Big Magic?
I have not.
Oh, it's so good. It talks about that. It's all about like creativity. And it's kind of hokey a little bit, but it says the universe will send ideas, and if you don't take it, then they're going to send it to somebody else. And that's why you can have an idea, and then you'll see it later, and you're like, I had that idea.
Yes. Okay.
So you didn't write down.
I love that because I've heard that be explained before, and I really love that idea of the idea of the ideas.
Yeah.
I love that thought process because I remember somebody explaining it to me one time. They were like, it kind of seems like ideas are like in the air, we cannot see that there is a constant river flowing.
Yeah.
And ideas are going to float by, and sometimes they will float into your brain and you'll be like, I thought of this thing. But if you don't capture it,
right. Yep.
It will continue to flow, and then whoever else down the river, down the stream, then catches that idea and actually captures that idea and shares it and does something with it.
Yep.
So that's actually, I feel like that's kind of in line with what that book is talking about. And that's always like a fascinating thought to me. Is like, yeah, sure, it's like magical and, sounds silly, but
then you've seen it, you're like,
yeah,
I had that idea.
there was a part of me that literally is like, I'm about to take this podcast down a whole other realm, but like there is a part of me that wonders like, there's no way we can see and hear and sense everything that exists. Like I'm sure there's, there's something that we don't know,
right,
that we can't comprehend. And I'm like, maybe that's not a far-fetched idea, that literally like ideas can be this genuine energy that can be captured while you're like sitting there or whatever. And then somebody else can get it at the same time or a different time if you don't capture it and do something with it at that point in time. This is not a conspiracy podcast, folks, or whatever. But I do think about that sometimes.
Yeah. That's why I'm like, no, that idea is mine.
Yes. I'm like, I am writing it down. I am going to I keep bringing it up because it's such an easy example, but like the idea for this podcast came to me 3 years before I even did it. Wow. And like in that moment, I was like, that's a good name. And I was like, and literally all at the same time, it wasn't like I planned for 6 months and was like, what could it be? That night, the name came to me, the logo came to me, and like the cover art and like theme, everything came to me. And I was like, I'm going to like, luckily I can jump on Photoshop and design it all out. And it's exactly what I did. Like I was sitting in bed, it popped, and I was like, I need to save this. And not only do I save it, but I need to like see a version of it exist.
Yeah.
So I immediately jumped and like designed the whole thing, and the cover art for this show was what was made that night in 2017.
That's awesome.
Because I just like captured that idea at that moment. I was like, whether this becomes a real thing or not, like I need to know that I caught it, essentially.
Yeah.
So it's fun even hearing that there's a book about that, and maybe I'm a little less insane for like thinking all magically about.
It's by Elizabeth Gilbert. It's really, really good.
Yeah, and you said it was called Big Magic?
Yeah.
Big Magic, okay.
It's either The Big Magic or Big Magic.
One of the two.
Yeah.
Either way. You can
Same thing.
Somebody can look up the author's name or the, magic and dreams and ideas, and I'm sure the book will pop up. Okay, so, man, time is freaking flying. Last couple things for you.
Yeah.
I would love to hear your thoughts and advice on if anybody's listening to this who maybe wants to be an aspiring author. Mm-hmm. What are you telling them? What kind of stuff do you share whenever somebody asks you that? I mean, realistically, I'm kind of even asking you that because like I think the idea is so cool to write a book whether it's poetry, whether it's like anything. So what are you saying when I'm sitting, I'm like,
Yeah.
Raquel, how the heck do I start writing a book, or how do I make it happen? What are you
Right.
telling me?
Well, you kind of have to have an idea, but I think everyone has a story. But I'd say if you don't have one, writing every day is definitely key. It's funny, I took this workshop by Megan Falley. She is freaking amazing. And that's another thing, take workshops. They will change your life. Like, the things that I have learned is beyond. And like, people will even tell me that they've learned more in a workshop than they did in college. So they're amazing. Anyway, she said that anyone can learn to be a writer. She said that I don't want to quote her and say she didn't say it's not a gift, but she said anybody can do it, and that you just have to practice it every day. I'd say read every day, whatever genre you're thinking about writing in. Take workshops and learn from other people. Connect with other writers. Google. I feel like I learned everything just from researching and asking people. So, whatever genre that's in, ask them questions, find out what's working and what's not working, what people, want to hear. And I'd even say too, what really helped me is having other people read your work and let them tell you like how they're receiving it or perceiving it. Another thing, read your work out loud. That is really important. Like, even, I know I'm a poet and sometimes I have to speak it out loud, but with any writing, like, you'll catch things that you wouldn't normally if you read it out loud. That was a tip that I always use.
Yeah, that's very interesting.
Never give up. Really. I mean, just keep trying. I just feel like ever since I took that break, like I regretted it so much and I'll never do it again. And I just feel like if you have a passion for it and an idea for it, just do it. I feel like the people that achieve are the ones who just put the work in. I mean, everybody has a desire to do something, but the ones that actually do it are the ones that are going to succeed. So, yeah.
I love it. On that same note, like, do you think, even kind of going off of the quote that you were saying of everybody can be a writer, or anybody can be a writer, or whatever that thought process was. Well, like, do you think that everybody has like something special in them? And I'm not even saying it has to be creative, but like maybe their purpose. Do you think everybody has that in them, and then it's kind of a case of like some people unlock that and others don't, and like they don't feed into that energy or that calling?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, because I feel like everybody has a story that can help somebody else. Everybody. So I guess some people choose to do something with it and others don't. Like my father, for instance, has no interest. He just wants to go to work every day and come home and have a beer, swim in the pool, and go to sleep.
Yeah. Right.
So, I totally agree with that. Like, it depends on what you want to do. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I even asked that because I feel like that is something I think about all the time, and I kind of feel like I know it's a quality or a trait that I have of like maybe identifying that in people, but I also think it's like a bad trait at the same time, because whenever somebody tells me about an interest that they even slightly have, I'm the person who's like, what if you did it? That's so cool. Like, however I can help, let's figure it out. Like, what if you did this tomorrow and you started that? Again, maybe it's a little bit of that imposter syndrome because I'm not being the perfect me every day. But I love trying to get people excited of like, yes, like follow that idea. And they're like, listen, dude, I said I sort of liked playing video games on my day off. I don't need to become a streamer. Like, chill. And I'm like, but you could. Like, so.
Well, you just never know the potential of something.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I think if you have an interest in something, just try it. You never know, like, where it could lead you. Yeah, maybe you just did it that one time and you're never going to do it again. Or maybe you're like, oh my gosh, that was amazing. I want to do it all the time.
Yes.
That's why definitely, I tell my son that all the time. Like, if you're interested, just try it.
Mm-hmm. I feel like I heavily subscribe to that idea. And again, I feel like it's a blessing and a curse altogether, because there is an ever-growing list of things that I want to do in my life.
Yeah. Ranging
from businesses or creative ideas or small to big, like whatever it is. And I try to be realistic with myself. I'm not like really getting out there with my ideas, but everything that pops up, I'm like, this is within my grasp. Mm-hmm. I just have to figure out how to do it. And I'm that type of person who sometimes I just have to get an idea out of my head and see a version of it exist. And then I actually find out that I'm okay with not going any further with that. Is that strange? Like, I feel like, we were talking about the whole, like, if you have ideas, just try it. Mm-hmm. I subscribe to that so much, where I'm always like, I need to just give this a shot.
Right.
Like fresh out of high school, I didn't want to go to college so bad that I was like, it's a trendy thing right now in the music scene that I'm involved in to have a clothing line. So I taught myself Photoshop, and I was like, I'm going to design these things, and then I'm going to figure out how to have a clothing line. But then after a couple of years of doing it, I was like, I'm done. Yeah. Like I don't need, like, it'd be cool if it blew up and became huge, but it got to whatever level it got to. But then I was like, I don't actually, like, I wasn't angry. I wasn't like, this failed, this sucked. I was just like, I checked it off my list.
Right.
And now what's the next thing I want to try? And I feel like I'm always going through those things where it's not so much I start and stop things or can't commit to things. Like if I commit to an idea, I'm like, I need to see it through to at least the level that I want to see it through as. But there's some times where, like, I've thought of like a business idea, and all I need is to go to Photoshop, design the logo for it, and make like the branding set for it, and then I'm actually satisfied. I'm like, I didn't actually want to have a pizza shop. I just had the idea for one, and I'm seeing it exist in the tiniest way.
Are you like a logo designer? Like, is that like a thing?
That is a thing. Okay. Yes, that is one of the.
That makes sense.
Yes, one of the things that is graphic design. Awesome. And so, luckily that's a skill that, again, like, helps me kind of get these ideas out of my brain of like, cool, I can do it. And I know that's a very like microscopic version of what you were saying of like, just try it.
Well, no, it's funny that you say that, because I tried graphic design. I actually went to school for it, but I was like, that's just not for me. Like, I've tried a lot of things too. Like, I totally get it. Like, and it's funny how you can be like great at something, but it's just still not for you. Like, well, I'm good at it, but it's not what I want to wake up and do every day.
Yeah, 100%. And so that's why, again, just to kind of bring it back full circle to you saying, just try it. Just give it a shot. And I think when you try those things, maybe you're weird like me, and sometimes you see a tiny version of it and you're like, that's enough. Checked off the list. I don't have to worry about that anymore.
True.
Or
no regrets.
Yes. And like you can also get in the process of trying, I think. And if you maybe fail at it or it doesn't work the way you thought it was going to, I think that's also going to unlock something in you that if there's something when you fail, let's say you're trying something and you fail at it, if something in you is like, we need to freaking do that again, we need to try a different version of that or whatever, that is kind of unlocking something that says you actually do need to be pursuing this.
Yeah.
Because it's like you said, you were like, I tried graphic design, and I was just like, whatever. Like, I did it, and I didn't need anything else out of it. There was nothing in you that was like, this is our thing. Like, yes, let's stick to it. So I think that's even the valuable thing too, is like, you can try it and fail it, and if it doesn't work, you can be like, that wasn't for me. I'm good with that. Or you can try it and fail it, and then there's something that's going to kick in you and be like, no, we need to figure this out. So then, okay, this is a path that I actually need to kind of go down.
Yeah. It's kind of cool just to say that you know how to do something too, Yeah. That you tried it or you've done it.
Well, I'm like, I cannot express to you how bad I am at that sort of stuff. I literally think I have an addiction to coming up with ideas and like wanting to do things, because like,
maybe that's your book.
That would actually, okay, listen, you're really making me want to do this book thing, okay? That's been on my, like I said, an overarching bucket list. I've always thought it would be cool to make a book, and you're making it sound way too possible right now.
It's totally possible.
Get me too excited about it. I'm gonna start. I'm
do
about to.
it.
After we finish this, I'm about to go home and I'm gonna freaking start this book. But that's just the thing is like there is just such a list of things that I want to do, and I literally feel like I have an addiction to wanting to try things because anybody can tell me anything, and I'm like, that does sound kind of interesting. Like, what if I tried that? Like, I don't know. How would I do that version of that thing or like whatever? Like. You know, when I was thinking literally earlier today before we recorded this, I was like, cool, I'm sitting down with Raquel tonight and she's a poet, she's an author. Like, I know we're going to talk about all that stuff. And literally just for a few seconds in my brain, I was like, how come I've never tried poetry? Like, I'm like, I've got some things I'd like to say. Like, that's a fun art form. Like,
do it.
And I don't know. I just feel like things like that are always crossing through my mind, and I'm sure they're crossing through a ton of people's minds, but they don't always have that thought or that push, whether from themselves or someone else, that says, just try it.
Yeah.
Just try it. Yeah. And it could work or it could not work. And so I think that that's vastly important for people to hear, of just like, just give it a shot.
And if you're scared, do it anyway.
Yeah. It kind of feeds into some of those like cliche sayings of like, if it's scary, that actually means you should give it a shot. Or if something becomes uncomfortable, that means you're growing, and that's a new door that's about to be open, or whatever it is. So before we keep talking in circles and I keep being like, listen to all my ideas I have, Raquel. A couple last things. I would love to hear, like, I'm taking us from like this fun-loving idea thing now to like deep dive. Like, let's share the deep emotional advice. But I would love to hear, especially I would love for the listeners to hear, what do you feel like your biggest lesson is that you've learned in your journey thus far, especially dealing with things like anxiety and depression? What do you think the biggest thing is maybe you've taken away at this point?
To be open to talking about it. I think, that's a big fear. Like, people don't want to be labeled crazy or that they have a mental illness, because I don't know why it sounds so scary, but seriously, if you open up and talk to people, there are so many people who deal with it, way more than you think. Like, you are absolutely not alone. And once I started talking about it, like, I realized a lot of my friends deal with it too, and they start talking to me about it. And now I have a couple friends that we can always go to each other, when we're experiencing this thing. And I feel like it can be such a lonely feeling. So, like, talking about it is key. Finding a therapist is hugely important. However, I want to preface that it can be hard to find the right one, and like, don't give up. I almost gave up. So the first one I tried just like wasn't a good fit. But then I had a friend, because I started talking about it more, recommended someone else, and it changed my life. I just think trying everything possible that you can think of to like get through it will get you through it.
I love it. Okay, so before we officially wrap up, I would love for you to share with people like where they can find your work around the internet. I know we're going from like deep dive question into like promotion, and I'm going to ask you one more deep question before we officially sign off. But before we do that, if people want to talk to you about, the things that you've shared here or check out your work, all that sort of stuff, where can they find you around the internet?
My website is raquelfranco.co. It's RAQUELFRANCO.co. It's not com. And then my Instagram and TikTok are raquelfranco.poet. That's probably the only place you want to find me. I have a Facebook page. I think it's the same, raquelfranco.poet. I think that's it.
Perfect. Okay, last question here. And it's a big one.
Okay.
Just kidding. I'm not going to build it up that much. You can answer however you want. But I end every episode of this the exact same way. I ask the same question. And I'm very excited to hear what you're going to say. So right now, I would love for you to pretend that everyone in the world is on the other end of that microphone in front of you.
Oh, boy.
So you have a mic that is connected to every single person in the world. It doesn't matter where they live. It doesn't matter language barriers. None of that matters. Through the power and magic of podcast, you can speak to all of them. If there was one thing you would want them to hear that you feel like people do not hear, what is it that you're sharing with everybody listening?
Whoa. There's so much. The biggest key is you are not alone. Like, there are so many people experiencing the same thing, maybe not in the same way, but like all of our feelings are linear. Like, I feel like I say it all the time, but to not give up, like whatever you're going through, I promise there's a light at the end of the tunnel. And it's tough. I feel like a lot of things I say are like cliche, but they are really true. I have been in super, super dark times, and I got through them, and I know that you can too. I think you just have to believe in yourself and have hope. Like, hope is key. Just hope that tomorrow's going to be better. And maybe not tomorrow, then the next day. Maybe in a month. Maybe it'll take a year, and that's going to be very painful, but you're going to be stronger on the other side of it. I think that's it.
Beautiful. Beautiful. I love it. That was great. Raquel, that was a freaking blast. Thank you so much for sharing your story, sharing all the freaking rad advice. Thank you for talking me into writing a book.
Yes.
And hopefully some of our other listeners to just go and try anything. Mm-hmm. Before we officially say goodbye, where can people go find your books? You know, where can they get them, and what are the titles? What do you want them to check out in that sense?
Awesome. My 2 self-published books are on Amazon. That is Keep Me Wild and This Woman Is Still a Girl. My latest book is called When the Bee Stings, and it's available on Amazon, Thought Catalog, and Apple Books.
Boom. There it is. I love it. Raquel, thank you so much for doing this. This was seriously a blast.
Yeah, this was fun.
We're done. That's it.
Sweet.
We freaking did it. We made a podcast. Okay, another one in the books. That is not a book pun. Although now that I pointed it out, it is, I guess. So there you go. I made some terrible skate puns last week as well. I'm going to try and not make bad puns a trend here on the show. But there it was. Either way, Raquel is a very awesome person. She is inspiring. She's encouraging. Genuinely, this talk with her made me want to someday write a book, whether it's poetry or not, whatever it is. Her and I talked even more after we got done recording, and honestly, she did a pretty good job at talking me into making some sort of book eventually. She really made it sound possible. Like, in the episode when I mentioned having even a slight interest in attempting to write a book one day, honestly, I was like fully expecting her to like get real with me, right? And say, listen, Ross, like, it takes a lot of work. Your entire life will have to change. It'll need to be all focused on writing a book. If you really want to try it, you got to drop everything else you got to do, or it's super expensive, or I don't know, something, honestly, that I thought was going to like bring down like the harsh reality on me, you know? But as you heard, she didn't. So I don't know. She made it sound very possible to make a book. So we'll see. You know, maybe one day I'll be plugging my own book on this show. Speaking of books, though, reminder that you can pick up Raquel's new poetry book, When the Bee Stings, on Amazon. Or if you want to talk to her also about poetry or making your own book or anything else that we covered in this episode, make sure to follow her on Instagram at raquelfranco.poet. And while you're over there, make sure to follow the show if you have yet to at WYDHpod. Segues, folks. I'm just on them. We're segueing from one thing to another as we wrap up this episode this week. If you did like this episode and my bad puns or my bad segues, I promise you that if you did like the conversation, at least, there's a lot more great conversations for you to find. So make sure to follow on Spotify, subscribe on iTunes. There's an entire archive of very fun conversations waiting for you. And of course, if you did like this episode, let us know by sharing it on social. Or honestly, you can just like DM me and tell me you liked it. That works too. At least I know. I just want to know if you like when I do these episodes. But on social, of course, like, subscribe, share, follow the list of ever-growing social media requests that everybody has. Do them if you haven't. Genuinely, though, it all plays a part in getting to help me grow this show and honestly helping me continue to do it. Word of mouth is what this survives off of right now. And a lot of that word of mouth, while it can't happen in person, I do want you to tell somebody about this show. A lot of it does live in the internet world of social media. So if you like what I'm doing around here, of course, if you want me to have more of these fun conversations and you want to see the show keep growing, share it around social media. If you do like what this show is about, then I implore you to come back next episode where I'll sit down with a brand new guest you may or may not know of once again as they share their story that you for sure never heard.